I've had the opportunity to sort of be in the room where it happened, with a lot of the transformations in this digital era of health. Back from the very beginning of the health web to be there where the guidelines were written that were signed off on by the FDA and the FCC and the Federation of State Medical Boards and the first existing 12 health websites in the world, and up through the e-health movement, or the participatory health movement, and e-patients, and a bunch of other things in the room where it happened. But a year ago, I was in a different room. Instead of being at Exponential Medicine, I was alone in the room with my father when he died. And Sigmund Freud said that a father's death is the most profound moment, the most important moment in a man's life. And I think that was probably true for him, and probably true for many people, but not for everyone. But the moment of the passing of a parent, or a grandparent, or a sibling, or a child is far more profoundly important than our typical conversations give credit to, and far more important than the healthcare system gives credit to. When was the last time that you were asked by a doctor about the death of a parent or a grandparent or a child or a sibling in any other way than just to check off the box about family history diseases in a profound way? It doesn't happen. And these are moments of big risk for our health and tremendous, unique opportunities for positive change. Now, as a pediatrician, I also get to be in the room where it happens at the beginning of life and get to see new babies. And both of those frames sort of give you a sense, or give me a sense, of what's really important in life, what's important in our careers, what's important in the impact that we want to have. So I want to talk a little bit about that, lessons from the end and the beginning of life. And to do that, I need to tell you just slightly about my dad. This is one of his favorite pictures of himself. If you were to open the curtains behind him, you would see the Capitol, the US Capitol, looming large. This is on the 6th floor of the HHS building when he was the Chief Dental Officer of the United States and the Deputy Surgeon General of the United States. And he went on to become Acting Surgeon General before coup. And this is a guy who knows health and knows healthcare and knows public health. He devoted his life to it, and who ended his life almost like a master class. He died at age 90. He was strong and super smart and wise to the very end, and strong up until the last year or so. And he died pretty much on his own terms. He was doing very well up until the last week of his life, and when he developed pneumonia. And we all thought for the first several days this would be another thing that he just had and conquered and go away. But his oxygenation kept getting worse. And on the evening before he died, he asked to have everybody come because he had a sense that this might be the end. We didn't really believe it. And the entire family came, grandkids and cousins, and we were all crowded into this. It was a hospice room. And we had hours of laughter and tears and singing and telling stories until everybody was connected and exhausted and satisfied. And we could tell he was getting tired, so everybody went home, but he asked me to stay. And that night, he couldn't sleep. He was just hyper alert. And so we spent the night together talking. And when I was a little kid, I can remember one of my earliest memories is being about 4 years old and reaching up and holding hands with him, walking on the beach and talking about the mysteries of the ocean, this huge ocean. And we talked that night about how we're alone together again and walking beside the biggest ocean of them all, the biggest mystery of them all. And he made it through the night. The next morning, my mom, his wife, and my twin sisters got together. That's me in the foreground holding his hand. I also noticed the iPhone in the foreground there. And we had a good little visit together, and then they left to get something to eat. And I noticed that his eyelids were getting heavy. And I said to him, it looks like you're getting sleepy after last night. And he nodded. And I said, let's get some rest. And he nodded. And I said, Dad, I love you. Pals forever. And pals forever was our sort of sign-off phrase from the time I was about 4. We would always say that when we were going somewhere. And he nodded again, and then he lifted his hand to salute me. And he was an admiral. And at several key moments in my life, he saluted me. When I left home to go to college was the first time. He saluted me when I was walking away from him into the door, into the chapel to get married. He saluted me when he put the hood on my head at graduation of medical school and saluted me as I started my career as a doctor. And that day, he couldn't get his arm all the way up. He was feeling pretty weak, but just this little salute. And then he took a nap and passed away in his sleep during that nap. But he died on his own terms, surrounded by love. And it was a beautiful lesson. But during that year, there were 2 things that he really wanted me to get, and I want to share those with you. The first one is to ask why relentlessly. Ask why, and then why, and then why. Because during his last year, even though he was a brilliant person in the healthcare system, the system didn't listen to him and kept doing things almost on autopilot because this is the way we do things and not because it made sense. For instance, on his 90th birthday, this is a guy with the most disciplined diet of anybody I've ever known, but on his 90th birthday, he wanted to have some cake and ice cream. And where he was, the doctor said, no, you can't do that. And he said, why? And I said, because of your cholesterol. And he said, right. And he said, why? And he kept asking, what's the goal here, right? And he did have the cake and ice cream, by the way. But the system isn't designed to think deeply why. And if we're going to have success, if we're going to score goals, we need to know what the goal really is. One way that translated for me just recently, thinking back to his last week, is we had a fire in Northern California where I live. It was a big, up north of the Bay, a huge forest fire, a lot of destruction. And I knew, as soon as I saw that all the asthmatic kids in San Francisco and in Silicon Valley would be lining up to get breathing treatments in urgent care centers and ERs, and in fact they did. But because of my dad, and because I'm in a practice that allows me the luxury to really connect with people, I thought, why? Why are we doing that? And after thinking for a moment, I called up on the phone all my kids with asthma. And this was before the smoke hit the Bay Area. And I said to them, why do we wheeze? Why do humans wheeze? And they all said, I don't know. And I said, here's the reason. Humans wheeze as an adaptive mechanism to protect our lungs from toxic and dangerous stuff in the air, mostly of the last 10,000 years, forest fires. And what happens is when there's a fire, your airways tighten, you get inflamed, you make extra mucus to trap the particles so they won't get deep in the lungs and damage the delicate tissues. It's a beautiful mechanism. The wheeze that you hear is just the air moving through tight airways and the tightness you feel. And asthma, on the other hand, is when you have that adaptive mechanism when you don't really need it. And that's what these kids had. But these were the last kids that I wanted to open up their airways so they could go to school and jump on trampolines and play soccer and breathe deeply and get all this junk into their lungs. So I told all of them, why don't you, I'll talk to your parents, plan on taking the next 2 or 3 days off of school, stay inside, turn on an ultra HEPA air filter, watch a lot of movies, don't be super active, and you can have a device at home so I can listen to if your breathing is not the direction it should, and we'll give you a breathing treatment. None of them needed breathing treatments, and they were protected for the long haul instead of short-sightedly just following the guidelines for kids with asthma. All because of just asking why. Now, that scenario could be automated. Tech would make it so easy. Not every doctor can call all of their patients, but you could have people tagged with their conditions and have the condition alert go out to everyone, and it could be the alert based on this year's thinking and this year's evidence, and they could have a device at home like this one, which is now my best stethoscope, and I brought it mostly because I wanted to bring some tool Daniel hadn't shown yet. And this is by TytoCare. It's an incredible stethoscope. Parents can have at home, and I can listen where I am. And they can see the readout where they are. And it does a lot more than just being a stethoscope. It's a camera, other things too. Asking why. I'm not going to tell this why story, but ask me about it later. But the second lesson that my dad taught me, besides why, was he said, don't just do something, stand there. When I arrived, my tendency was to go try to fix things as much as I could. And what he was looking for was presence, deep presence. And I learned over the last year what that means. And for me, he would call me so many times during that last year and say, Alan, I need you. And he'd never been a needy person in his life. But again and again, it was at inopportune moments, in the middle of the night, in the middle of a busy patient day, and what I wouldn't give to hear that call again now. But I would go, and what presence meant for me was setting down my phone and slowing down, being unrushed in the moment, and not having already determined what needs to happen here, but listening to the situation. And as we were both calm and unrushed, this amazing thing happened. Our mirror neurons were firing back and forth, and I began to tune the instrument of my own brain. It's an incredible sensor processing system, and the subtle changes that would happen from the moment I walked into the room, opened that door, the change in my inner state was reflecting his inner state. So I got the sense of what it was, a little tiny taste of what it's like to be losing everything. And a little sense of what it's like to cherish each day. This might be my last April. And there was like this vibrancy and joy and grief that were all there that I could only experience when I slowed down. One interesting study this year says that our brain tends to store our memories in scenes. And the scenes tend to be broken up by walking in or out of a door. That's why people will walk into one room and think, why did I come in here? And for me, walking into the door was a powerful moment where I could start a new scene with him. There was this resonance that happened between us, and then beyond that, there was this deep level of trust and peace that came from presence. It was really healing from him. You could see him. The nurses and doctors would talk about how much better he was doing every time we were together. And I've learned that trust is a far bigger issue for the elderly than love. They have a hard time knowing who to trust and how much. It's really difficult. So I began to explore myself, what are the enemies of presence? And I think it's different for all of us. Some people, it might be there. For clinicians, I suggest you ask yourself, what are the enemies of presence? And it might be the payment structure or the clinic structure. For me, it was three things. One of them was being in a hurry. I had to be unrushed. I had to slow down. One of them was having a preconceived idea of what should happen in this interaction. I had to go in it openly. And the third one was distraction. And distraction was huge for me. And distraction is a big thing. So almost every talk, it feels like this week, people have talked about the cell phone. They have pulled out iPhone of one kind or another, or some other smartphone, and talked about how it has changed our world in the last 10 years, and it really has. It is the most connecting device probably in history. It allows us to be present at a distance with people, allows us to connect with the world's knowledge in ways never before, but it is also the device that is most able to destroy presence almost in history. It's amazing how that works, and one way is with texting. We know, and right now, as we're together, there are 660,000 people who are behind the wheel of a car with their phone in their hand. And we know that that causes 1.6 million excess accidents every year, 330,000 excess injuries, and just in the last couple of years, it is now 6 times more likely to die from texting than from drunk driving. And as a pediatrician, we look at kids and how important they are. 11 teens die every day from texting. So the same device that creates presence can destroy it. There's out in Washington, DUIE, driving under the influence of electronics. I think there should also be something called doctoring under the influence of electronics, where we're not present with our patients because of the technologies we have. There's a phenomenon called phubbing, which is snubbing someone when you're looking at your phone and feeling distant because you're looking at your phone. There should also be something called phubbing, physicians ignoring people because of their technology, or EMR-ubbing, for filling in the chart instead of paying attention to the person. So I ask you to consider, as you're closing out exponential medicine, about how technology can enable presence and how presence can make the technology all the more powerful, and to look for opportunities both direction. Whether it's AI, which can make you more present at the most important moment, or more insightful when you are present, or VR or AR or genetics, or all of these things can have a powerful, the more powerful they are, the more powerful impact they can have one way or the other on presence. A long time ago, when we started drgreene.com as the first medical website, and we looked at screenside manner. How do we make it not cold and distant? And the way we did that was to ask the question behind the question. If a parent came in and said, there's a lump in my kid, what might it be? The real question was, is this cancer? And by addressing the question behind the question, you're able to connect even over a distance setting. The thing I started with, this is another thing I just found here at Exponential Med, the Cocoon Cam, that lets parents be connected to their kid and know what's going on in them when they're away from home and know all what's going on. So I just ask you, please, as you leave Exponential Medicine, to consider presence and what that can do for making whatever you're involved in more powerful. And I just wanted to say, Dad, pals forever.